you always have to raise your hand. It's always good to have folks look after you and sponsor or mentor you, but at the end of the day, nobody is as invested in your career and your learning as yourself.
Welcome to Identity Unveiled. IU is a platform that supports advancement of Asian American women to the executive ranks. We highlight amazing stories of Asian American women becoming the first in their industry or breaking barriers as executives and leaders. Today we have a special guest, Cynthia Chu, CFO and Growth Officer of Audible. Welcome to the show, Cynthia.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, Cynthia, let's dive right into your story. How was your ascent as an AAPI woman to the top? Tell us a bit about your background growing up as an Asian American woman.
I'm actually originally from Hong Kong and I moved to the US for university. So I spent most of my adult life in the US, and I would definitely have to say that my heritage is quite different than the Western value. And I think this is where the difference in terms of what I'm familiar with is very community based, very familial, versus the Western value is a little bit more individualistic. This really kind of shapes how I am as a leader. I tend to lean into the we in the team because of the community based as group and how do we bring everybody along. But I think that becoming an American also helped me in learning about how to use my voice more and expressing my opinion during the appropriate time. So I really view this as both sides of my culture and experience, if you will, in the last, almost 20 years or 30 years, actually, fusing them together. And that's how shaped me as a leader. I think there's both entertainment and in business world, I observe that there are a lot more representation. I think we can do much better, but I'm seeing those coming to fruition, particularly for AAPI and for women leaders. So that's really good to see. So, which is why I'm also quite happy to get invited to a podcast and outlet like this, giving our voice more of a platform.
I'm curious, I grew up in Texas, so maybe similar experience, but how was your experience growing up from Hong Kong to Wisconsin? When did you come to Wisconsin?
I came to the US almost 30 years ago. And I actually started my journey in the US in a suburb of Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, if you will. And then I moved to Wisconsin probably about a year and a half in. And it was really interesting because people might not think that a Midwestern state would have that amount of international population, but actually University of Wisconsin, Madison was my alma mater, and it's actually having a very thriving international student body. So it was really great to have like mind and people with my background, but also being exposed to many different culture, not just AAPI, but many different culture.
Amazing. So you moved here by yourself without a family?
Yeah, I moved here by myself. I lived in a host family for the first year and a half, and it was really definitely formative stage early on in my young adult life.
That's incredible. I've had many friends that similar came when they were high school, junior high, and college by themselves. It was such a difficult time. I remember just spending time with them, wanting to help them out. You went to college, and then tell us a bit more on your career as an executive after that.
I never really thought about my career journey as I want to become an executive. I think how I've approached my career has always been, what am I learning? What am I getting to build my toolkits, right? That I'm, my skill set on a project, initiative, or business that I'm working on. And I really tend to think about learning. And also on the flip side, what am I being able to contribute to whatever I'm working on? I started my career when I finished college. I started my career with General Electric in their financial management program. It was a great learning experience because we were exposed to multiple different businesses. It was kind of a leadership training program. So we get to rotate amongst different businesses. I moved around quite a bit around the country. And then I went on to join their internal corporate audit staff, which was kind of a consulting arm of General Electric, whereby I got to travel the world. I had assignment in Europe, in Asia, in Latin America. And that really broadened my horizon, not just in different industry that I was exposed to, different manager, different teams, different style, but it already also really truly shaped my thinking and my experience. And then back then, that's how I got into NBC. NBC used to be part of General Electric, and that's how I got into the entertainment industry. And that was really fascinating. And being in a content business quite resonate with me. So I was there actually for over 12 years, started in the broadcast world in local station, as well as then later on went on to cable side, cable channels. And that's where I actually transitioned into my executive leadership role. That I got my first CFO role in Oxygen, which is the smallest cable channel that NBC owned at the time. Went on to, before I left the company, I was the CFO for USA Network, which was their largest cable channel. So I've saw a lot of different parts of the business. And then about actually over 12 years ago, Audible call and seeked me out. And at that moment, I was really seeking again, thinking back into the learning curve, is I really wanted to be exposed and work in a technology company. And Audible truly is a perfect marriage of content and technology company. And so that was really intriguing to me. And having met the founder, the CEO at the time, as well as many of the other team members and executive, it really drove me there. And here I am 12 years later, having fun.
Incredible. How did you get the opportunity to work with Audible? So you knew the CEO.
Well, actually, the recruiter reached out to me, and it was actually a lengthy discussion. And in the sense that because I was really quite happy at NBC Universal, I really had built up a lot of credibility in that company. But at the same time, at that moment, I really wanted to be working for a technology company. So when Audible opportunity came up, I was really intrigued.
And why a tech company? I'm just curious.
I think I was learning because technology really was driving a lot of different changes in the media and the content industry. And being at a more traditional legacy media company at NBC Universal, technology was just fashioning. So I was really wanting to understand what does it mean to build a technology product from a financial standpoint, and how do you kind of think about all of those different challenges in building a business?
What are you thinking financially? Like, what is the main driver for a tech company leading as a CFO?
That's a very good question. It's actually quite broad. I think many of the financial acumen and training that you learn from other industry quite applicable. You really need to have a strong understanding of a balance sheet. Good cash flow is very key. Obviously, how do you kind of think about top line growth as well as growing sustainably and profitably, so that you want to make sure that you're keeping in mind profitability. But I think at Audible, one of our core people principle, our value is being customer obsessed. So we're not thinking about short term in driving just growth and profit on the bottom line, but really thinking about how do we build value? How do we generate value? And sometimes those activities may not have immediate payback. You have to look at it from a long-term standpoint. So being in a subscription-based business, we really think through the notion about how do we generate long-term customer value. And we believe that by focusing on customer, the rest will come, the business output should come, and the outcome should come.
As an AAPI woman in your profession, you have been on many executive leadership rooms and positions. What challenges have you encountered as an AAPI woman?
Yes, I think we, a fair bit have experience. I would say two things: a lot of generalization and stereotyping. I think people tend to see us as a group as maybe more muted, quiet, more reserved, more differential, and oftentimes in the background. But in fact, I would posit to say that we actually do have a lot of strong opinions, and provide a lot of value into whatever we're doing and adding by our voice. So I would say that I still have to remind myself to use my voice. How do I make sure that I explicitly defy those stereotype or generalization? Because I'm a natural introvert. I'm an analytical person. And so I really have to make sure that I make space and remind myself to do that.
As I would say, Chinese American, every culture has their strengths, right? My husband is Chinese, I'm Korean. I see strengths. How did you, growing up in your culture, provide strength for your career?
I think it comes back to hardworking, value education, value curiosity. And I think making sure that you got the foundation right. I call it in the financial world, the technical skill set, you got to have that. That's foundation. And then you build upon that how you present yourself. How do you make sure that your voice and opinion have a platform to voice out? And sometimes you have to be explicit and you have to explicitly remind yourself doing that. Which is why I think that in position that I'm in right now, I often try to make sure that I provide that opportunity for up and coming talent.
What do you believe is a key to your career?
I don't fixate on getting ahead. It's not a cliche, but it is kind of what I really hold true is learning. What am I learning? What am I adding value? And I think curiosity and problem solving are two really key traits that I focus on. And that led to many of times how I approach things is how do I find solution? Oftentimes every day we encounter challenges here and there, big and small. I tend to kind of think about how do I think about a solution? How do I become really solution oriented is really truly kind of how I think about it. And so it's really, these are the natural parts of me. And so I tend to lean into these core value that I hold true and go from there. And I think over the last few years, I started at most of my career has been in the financial discipline. This Audible is my third CFO job. About almost 4 years ago, my CEO asked me to take on the marketing organization and the growth marketing organization. And so what that means is, focus a lot on customer acquisition. How do we create lifetime value, manage the customer life cycle? And that is a new area for me. So I get to nerd out a little bit about ensuring that I understand the core of the operation. I ask a lot of questions. And so like curiosity and solution oriented kind of comes into play, and it allows me to build on top of that. And so I treat all of these as learning opportunity, even to this day. And I'm hopefully not done learning.
I love your theme of leading with learning, and you're very open and you're malleable and you've achieved so much, but learning is at the forefront still. Would you ever consider being another C-suite role in the future?
There's no fixed path. There's opportunity to learn and add value to build business. I think I view myself as truly a learner. I am curious. And I think at the CFO role, I work with all of the other C-suite partners and departments, right? So I think innately that asks a lot of questions. And that's kind of how I learn. And whenever I take on a new job or a new team or new area or discipline, I always set the expectation with my team that, hey, I'm going to come in, I'm going to ask a lot of questions. Doesn't mean that I'm questioning the efficacy. It's truly how I learn. I learn by being hands-on and deep dive into it. So actively listening and understanding from the other side perspective, I think is very important.
What do you think needs to be done to have more AAPI women reach executive ranks?
I think throughout my career, I've been really fortunate to have really good mentor and sponsor. I think those are slightly different nuances, the difference. And that doesn't have to be a certain race or an ethnicity. I think all sorts of people should have that opportunity and be willing to be ally and sponsor and mentor to also folks with different background. So you don't really have to have a certain background or certain experiences to be that. I think you have to be open-minded. I think it's really important to remember to give space and opportunity and take chances on emerging talent, because many of people have given me chances. There's always a first in something that you do. So I think it's really important to do that. At Audible, as an example, we're a creator business. We work with creators that have big names like Daniel Day-Kim to really help them, work with them to bring their vision to life. But at the same time, on the other side, we also work with emerging talent and creators to really find those underrepresented and untapped voices in telling different stories. We're in the storytelling business. And I think it's really important to have those and showcase those different perspectives and giving that platform and having that space for that. So I would say that, thinking about what we do in the creator and content world, I would love to see more of that in the corporate world.
Incredible. What's a specific story about how you had a mentor or you were sponsored in your foray into C-suite?
That's a very good question. That was a story that I always tell is my first CFO job. At that moment, I was, again, learning about I was rotating through different parts of finance jobs, if you will, and it was great learning. I was in a job for probably about 6 months. I didn't think that you would, be rotating to another job or going for another job. That this was all internal to NBC Universal. And I remember my CFO that I worked for at the time, there was a job that came up. We acquired Oxygen Media is a new smaller cable channel that NBCU just acquired. And she came to me and said, "Hey, Cynthia." And she knew that I was, looking to different jobs and eventually I would like to own my own P&L and run my own P&L. That was at the moment was my next step in my career journey. And she basically said, "Look, Cynthia, you should raise your hand. They're looking for someone who, the company was looking for someone who would be going in and integrating a new channels into a big conglomerate. And you have deep understanding of how the company work. You know many different people across the different parts of the company." And so she thought that this would be a good stretch assignment for me. And so I took her advice and threw my name in the hat. And I obviously had to go for the interview and whatnot. It's still merit based, right? But I would not have raised my hand because I didn't think that I could if it weren't because my manager and mentor and sponsor, quite frankly, really give me the nudge. So that story really holds true to me today. You always have to raise your hand. It's always good to have folks look after you and sponsor or mentor you, but at the end of the day, nobody is as invested in your career and your learning as yourself. And sometimes you'll be surprised to raise your hand because what's to lose? Like, even if I didn't get the job, I had that experience to say, okay, well, these are the type of things that I need to work on to fill out my toolkit.
So as a fast-growing tech company, you're working with emerging talent to big stars like Daniel Day Kim. What does that look like? Can you tell us for people that don't understand what Audible is?
Yeah, so Audible, we're a storytelling company. So we distribute audiobook. So we work with publishers and we're a distributor, but we're also a creator of original storytelling. And so we worked with Daniel in telling his stories. He has a production company, 3AD. And so we work with his company and his production company on various different projects. And then on the emerging talent side is exactly, we have in different location that we operate in around the globe, we have tailored to different parts of, so for example, in the US, we have this emerging playwright program that we work with different up and coming playwright and writer to write to the audio aesthetic because we're an audio company. So like those are the type of things that we work with. So we're a distributor and we're also a creator of audio storytelling content.
Well, Cynthia, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah.